But we wonder sometimes how it all works. And we wonder sometimes how it's all being put together. I wonder sometimes how, with so many components and levels and aspects, the human being is a one piece after all. And what holds all this together? And sometimes, indeed, we break down. And then we know that in a way it's easier to break down than to be put together. And maybe at times of a moral or psychological or spiritual or emotional breakdown, we realize the riddle behind it all, the mystery behind it all. How, after all, does it all work? How am I at one piece? And how do we as a group function as one piece? And how does the world function as one piece? And how does the whole universe function as one piece? What is this that holds it all together? It's not self-evident. There is a mystery behind it. And part of the mystical path has been to try and grapple with this mystery. And first of all, to try and not take things for granted at any moment. Because at any moment, everything can fall down. Everything can collapse and break. And maybe, just maybe, not always there is a chance to regenerate again. Nothing is really given for granted. And yet it has been our experience that it is regenerated. So what holds it all together? Really, if we look into ourselves as deeply as we can, and it's not always possible, but sometimes, rare moments it is, we discover that there is an abyss. There is an abyss of darkness inside, and it's very, very deep. And it's beyond analyzing, and beyond naming names, and beyond giving theories. It's a total darkness. But this darkness too is somehow held together. And what I'd like to use the wisdom of the tradition and the masters here is to point to that mystery of the darkness, the imminence of the breaking down of everything, and the mystery of being held together. And it cannot be done, this cannot be achieved according to the tradition without some helpers being among us. Invisible helpers. Not necessarily those that we can point to and name by names and recognize, but sometimes people, and they are people, they're not beings, they're not angels, they're not celestial beings, they're human beings, who in the darkness, in the unknown, they work, and the purpose of the work is just one, to hold all this together. Why it has to be held together? Because this is His wish. He created us and the world in order that He be known. I was a hidden treasure and I loved to be known. Therefore, I created creation. So as long as there is this divine desire to be known, to be worshipped by people, plants, waves, winds, knowing Him, as long as there is this desire, we have to be held together. And really there is not much more to it. But in order to be held together, us as individuals, a group as a group, peoples, nations, the whole, there have to be these hidden lights, these invisible helpers who are scattered around. I read one tradition in this vein to you. The prophet said, among the kings there is one who, when he talks, he is not heeded. When he is absent, he is not missed. When he is spoken of for wedding, he is not wedded. When he asked to see the ruler, his request is not granted. Yet, in the day of resurrection, if his light were to be placed over the whole people of the universe, he would fill them with light. And another tradition. It is related that once Omar, who was the second caliph, went into the mosque and saw Mu'adh ibn Jabal, who was one of the Prophet's companions. He saw him weeping at the Prophet's tomb. "Why do you weep?" he said. He said, "Because of a tradition which I heard related by the Prophet." The Prophet said, "The smallest amount of showing off is idolatry. God loves the fearful ones, the hidden ones, the innocent ones, those who, when they are absent, they are not missed. When they are present, they are not known. Their hearts are the lamps of guidance. They have been delivered from all the murkiness of the dusty earth." So you see, there is this tradition, and it's very important. It sustains really the whole esoteric foundation. That in order to hold everything together, there have to be also the hidden ones. The ones who, when they are not present, they are not missed. When they are present, they are not known. And this may throw our mind in a completely different direction from the one that we have been accustomed to. And it points to something that I don't know if I could explain, but all that I could do is to say, I have been touched by this tradition, and I feel that I have to impart it on. Now, this tradition is also connected with the belief that these hidden lights, these workers, these helpers, who are mostly unknown, it is connected with the belief that they create a kind of hierarchy. I'm using this word because it appears in Mrs. Tweedy's book. The word hierarchy doesn't necessarily come in the text that I have been familiar with, although maybe it's just a question of interpretation. But it's good and convenient to use it because these people create a structure. Actually, this is the mystical structure. Sometimes it is portrayed as a pyramid, whose base, of course, is wide, and it goes and becomes narrow as it reaches its apex. And there are numbers that the tradition transmits. There are so many numbers of righteous men at the foundation of this pyramid. There's so many at the second layer of it, and so many at the third layer of it, and so many at the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth, and the seventh. I will read to you one such tradition which describes the numbers, but please don't take it in a sort of systematic way. The numbers do vary, so don't think that it has to be like that, and don't think about it as a sort of, yes, it has to be these numbers. So this is one tradition which describes the hierarchy. There are many pious people, and they mix with the masses for the sake of men thriving in their religion and in their lives. There is a smaller number of dignitaries, and an even smaller number of elect. And they mix with the elite. There are those who are named Abdal. Abdal means substitutes. We'll come into that later. The Abdal's number is even smaller. They live in big cities, but there is only one of them in each big city. It is a blessing for a place if sometimes it happens that there are in it two of the Abdal. The pillars are four. One in the south, one in the north, one in the east, and one in the west. And the pole is swiveled by God among the four corners of the world, as the celestial sphere is swiveled in the horizon. The whereabouts of the pole, who is the Ghawth, Ghawth is an Arabic word which means the helper, the mushkil gusha. So the whereabouts of the pole are concealed from both masses and elite because God is jealous for him. But he is often seen as being knowledgeable and ignorant, stupid and astute, giving up and taking hold, near and far away, easygoing and difficult, trusting and cautious. He holds the opposites. The whereabouts of the pillars, the 4 pillars, is revealed only to the elite. The whereabouts of the Abdal is known to the elite and the mystics. The whereabouts of the dignitaries and the elect are concealed from the masses, but it is revealed amongst themselves. The whereabouts of the pious ones are revealed to both the masses and the elite, so that God's rule can become manifest. The number of dignitaries is 300. The number of elect is 40. As for the Abdal, some say the number is 30. Some say 14. Some say 7. And this last number is correct. There are 4 pillars. When the pole dies, God replaces him with the best of the 4. When one of the 4 dies, God replaces him with the best of the 7. When one of the 7 dies, God replaces him with the best of the 40. When one of the 40 dies, God replaces him with the best of the 300. When one of the 300 dies, God replaces him with the best of the pious. And when God wills to execute the hour, which means the end of days, he kills them all. By them, God protects his servants from misfortune. By them, God makes the rain fall. See, there's very interesting things here. And it would be too lengthy to enumerate it again. But I will emphasize one point. I think it's very important, at least for me. When God wills to execute the hour, which in the Sufi and Muslim tradition, it's in eschatological terms, which means the end of days, the end of the world. When God wills to execute the hour, he kills them all. But as long as the world is maintained in the way that it seems to be maintained kind of forever, it is through them that God's servants are protected, and it's through them that the rain falls. When this is as esoteric a tradition as you can get, and in a way it sums up things that have been going on in the way of transmitting traditions for many, many, many centuries. It's not an old tradition. in respect of the history of this esoteric tradition, but it is the accumulation of the esoteric knowledge that brought it, in a sense, into some sort of structure, a spiritual structure without which nothing can hold, and without which all our efforts cannot be sustained. They have to be amongst us, dispersed in the whole world, in the four corners of the earth, these helpers. And it's also important to emphasize, at least from my understanding, that they are not guiding angels. They are not spiritual beings who have descended from heaven to earth. They are human beings who have accomplished something about themselves. And yet their tasks, maybe like the avatars of another tradition, is just to be there, and not necessarily to be known, or to be known just amongst themselves. And as for the pole, which is the image of the central pole in the tent, which holds the tent, the universe together, as for the pole, he is not known at all. And when he is known, he comes through as both knowledgeable and ignorant, wise and stupid, trustworthy and cautious, and so on. So he's like God, a perfect image of God that holds the opposites. And in this tradition it's very, very clear that God help you if you think of him as benevolent only, or if you think of him as mighty only. It's this and it is the other. These are the opposites. Now, in the dream that I told last time, a woman who probably lies at night beside her husband dreams of him as one of the Abdal, as one of the 40. I mean, I gave another number in that tradition. Number said maybe 30, maybe 14, maybe 7. Most of the traditions say that there are 40 Abdal, 40 successors. And the dream that I read, I call the dream of the 40th Savior. And I read it now again. And maybe against the few words that I have said about the esoteric tradition, about the hierarchy, maybe this dream is going to make a little bit more sense. Because the gist of the dream is that through his wife, a man becomes aware of his position in the world as one of the helpers. In fact, as the 40th who complete the number, without whom the world cannot be sustained, his world. The situation at the background of the dream is of a calamity, a catastrophe. There's no way that the people of this region are going to be saved from the wrath of the Turks, the marching Turks. And yet they are saved. And they are saved thanks to the fact that 40 people have been taken by the prince. And in fact, there have been only 39. And the whole thrust of the dream is, where is the 40th? And when the 40th comes, he comes to complete the number. The question is not How do we interpret it? The question is to take it in. The thing is to take it in. And I read the dream again. My wife dreamed that she was standing by the Sakiba road. She said, I was looking toward the cemetery far ahead. My eyes wandered far till I could see, as it were, the environment of Dawoodabad. And I saw a multitude of people, as though the whole space was full of people. I saw human beings hanging on trees and on fences like birds on top of trees. I said, what is this? And someone replied, it is the prince. He has suddenly descended upon us. He warned no one. For 12 days his troops have been on the move and we knew nothing. And now the whole earth is full of them. She said, I looked at the people and saw that the faces had turned yellow. Their lips were parched, the saliva dried up in their mouths from terror and fear for their lives. She said, then I saw you, she says to her husband, as if you were entering the place where I was. You took your clothes off and you asked for water and you approached a brass basin which I saw had water in it. Then you washed and put on a loincloth, and over it you put your outer dress and you put on your sandals. She said, I asked you, what are you doing? And you said, don't you see this wondrous thing? What is it that the prince wants? You understand now that the prince is not a military commander. She said, then I saw that all the people silenced down, dumbfounded by terror, as though they did not recognize one another, as though from terror they became strangers to one another. And I saw you, calm and confident, without fear. And you said to me, don't you see this wondrous thing? The prince wants 40 people of all the denizens of the earth to talk to. I said to you, won't you go? And you said, praise be to God. The whole world is looking at me. They are saying, if only Muhammad ibn Ali helps us. If not, we are lost. He is gathering from all the people of the earth those 40. If I am not amongst them to complete the 40, these people will perish. But what will make me known to the prince? And when will he know me? It is meant that I myself should complete the 40, because the 40 is not complete. And the rumor is that the prince has descended with his Turkish troops upon these people. She said, then you put on a white wrap and a white headgear and sandals and went off. She said, and in my dream I imagined that when you came to the prince, you saw the people retreating alongside the Turks. And the Turks were not striking them. And the terror which I had seen on the faces subsided. I said, and I was still standing at the head of the road, are any of those 40 amongst you? And a man answered, thanks to these 40, we were saved. And another man said, we were saved thanks to Muhammad ibn Ali. She said, I started crying. They asked, why are you crying? It is thanks to him that we were saved. she said. I said, I don't cry because of the fear that something bad has happened to him. I cry because of his tender heart. How would he be able to face the blade of the sword? For at this moment I imagined that those 40, the necks were cut off. Therefore I cried. She said, then I returned home, and when I arrived at the house's gate, I turned and saw that you had already arrived. It seemed to me that the night had passed, and this was the morning after the day you had gone. She said, I said, praise be to God. How were you saved? And you said to me with your hand like this, I wish I could tell you. She said, I saw you dressed in white, and your stature has become as that of 2 tall men, and as though your cheeks reddened and glowed with sparks, and on your forehead and eyebrows there was something like dust. She said, and I looked and saw that it was not dust, but from the terror and fear it had become like that. See, he is human. His hair whitens overnight. She said, I said to you, how were you saved? She said, and you said, don't you see, I was the first of the 40. And how he knew me, and how he got hold of me. And he got hold of me in this place, and you pointed to your breast, and shook me violently till I thought my limbs would scatter. This is not a meek and mild God. And then he said to me, you are the head of the world. My whole army is under you. She said, I asked you, did you see the prince? Did you see the prince? And you said, no. But I came up to the entrance of a dome, and upon the doorway to the prince, a canopy was set up. And I saw the prince, as though he stretched his hand from this dome, and thus he got hold of me in this place, and shook me, and said this to me. It's not about seeing. It's about being within his grip. That nothing else can be done except what he wills. Then he sent us all to an enclosure, and it seemed to me that this enclosure looked like the festival platform in the cemetery. And he said to the soldiers, take these 40 into that enclosure and lock them there, standing up. Don't let them sit. And he sent me along with them into that enclosure. And he pointed towards those who were with me among this number. And he said, send this one to perform the prayer. And I went into them. Then I was sent to perform the prayer. And as though these people were elected from all around the world. And I passed through the prince's troops and the Turks, and no one harmed me. Now I knew that the prince has a regard for me, and that he had assembled all this assembly for my sake, so that I, together with these 39, would emerge. And it was I that he had in mind. She said, and I said to you, now calm yourself down. And you said, I have been delivered for myself. And then you ascended the mosque. She said, and I saw you standing above the people, she said, and I woke up. It's one of the last dreams in a series of dreams which Abu Abdallah's wife had dreamed for a period of time, and also of dreams that he himself had dreamed by way of preparing him to become the 40th savior. It's quite phenomenal, and I won't say that I can even put a particle of my imagination into the question of what it means that a wife dreams such a dream for her husband. I would not even ask the question of what it means that a man becomes aware of his task in the world. But I will also only say that this man, Abu Abdallah Muhammad ibn Ali, has become someone who has nurtured the tradition of the helpers, of those on whom the world exists, without whom everything falls apart. One of the early teachers in the mystical tradition within Islam, the mystical tradition that we call Sufi, one of the early ones who have said and who have taught that there have to be a number of helpers, and there have to be always a layer of people whose heart is so completely devoted that they have been delivered from the self. They can have no desires in the sense that we know desires, because they only have one desire: to serve Him and to be the means whereby the whole thing is kept in one piece. Now it is possible, it is just possible, that we should take this also into our consciousness. It's a mysterious teaching. And how more mysterious can it be when it's not only a question of the visible ones who help us, but it's also a question of the invisible ones who help us. But they are there. The whole tradition of Khidr is based on that. The shimmering one, the one that stands between the opposites, the one that you meet where the two seas meet, when you are really on the edge, when you are close to death, when you are close to a total breakdown, when you are in utter despair. The invisible one who puts his hand and pulls you out of the depths into the light again. I don't know how to explain it, but the tradition is there. And I feel it has to become part, that's my feeling, it has to become part of our consciousness. Because this is not just a fringe tradition, it's not something that you say, oh, it's esoteric, okay. I dig it out. You'll find it mentioned so many times and reiterated by the masters. Abu Abdallah dedicated his life to bring together many of these esoteric traditions. And they were put together in a big book which is called The Rarest of Traditions. He was not afraid to collect rare traditions. I mean, there had to be some courage there because the community really loved to transmit those traditions which became more or less orthodox. And when a book is compiled and it is named the rarest of tradition, it's already non-orthodox. So here is one of these traditions and his explanations of it. And it is called Explaining the Number and the Characteristics of the Abdal. There are some names of transmitters which I will read, but don't bother to. I mean, they are historical names that are not necessarily important. In the name of Ubadah ibn Samit, he said, the Messenger of God had said, the Abdal are 30 men whose hearts are modeled upon the heart of Abraham. When one of them dies, God replaces him with another. In the name of Anas ibn Malik, he said, the Abdal are 40 men. Whenever one dies, God replaces him with another. Then, at the day of resurrection, they will all pass away. Somewhere else, I found a version of this tradition which you may like, so I read it. The Abdal are 40 men and 40 women. Whenever one of the men dies, God replaces him with another man. Whenever one of the women dies, God replaces her with another woman. It is also told that Uthman ibn Attar said, my father had said, the Abdal are 40 people. I said to him, don't say people, say men. He said, no, say 40 people. Perhaps there are women among them. These are early traditions, they are not modern versions. Abu Abdallah continues, after he had transmitted or written down the tradition, he goes into explaining them, and he writes, one tradition says that there are 30, the other tradition says that there are 40, but there is no discrepancy between the two traditions. There are indeed 40 men, but the hearts of 30 of them are modeled upon the heart of Abraham. This is borne out by what was transmitted in the name of the Prophet. He said, the prophets, peace be upon them, were the pillars of the earth. Then, when prophecy ceased, God replaced them with people who are named Abdal, substitutes. They do not surpass people with the profusion of fasts, prayers, or hymns of praise. But they surpass people with a good nature, the sincere God-fearing, the good intention, the integrity of their hearts towards all men, and the counsel for the sake of God. In these, they seek to please God with perseverance, forbearance, understanding, and humility without humiliation. They are the successors of the prophets. They are people whom God has chosen for himself and singled out for himself in his knowledge. They are 40 righteous men, 30 of whom are modeled upon the certitude of Abraham, the friend of the compassionate one. It is due to them that the denizens of the earth are guarded from affliction. It is due to them that the people are protected from misfortunes. It is due to them that the rain falls and that crops grow. None of them ever dies unless God brings forth another to replace him. You see, the number has to be complete at any moment. They never curse anyone. They never cause harm to those beneath them. They never regard them with arrogance or contempt. They don't envy those who are above them, and they don't have any desire for the world. They don't pretend to be weak, nor are they aloof, nor do they display false humility. Theirs is the best reputation. They possess the most noble selves. Generosity is their nature. Integrity in the face of men's claim is the characteristic. The nature does not fluctuate. They are not in a state of fear today and in a state of heedlessness tomorrow. Rather, they are relentless in the state of being. As for their association with the Lord, a violent gale cannot exceed them, neither can a galloping horse. Their hearts ascend to heaven, seeking rest in God and longing for God. They are moving on through the longing for his grace. They are God's party. For the party of God, they are those who thrive. The traditions always emphasize, so I read another tradition. The Prophet had said, "The Abdal of my community do not enter paradise due to the profusion of the fasting and praying. They enter it due to God's mercy, due to the integrity of their hearts, the generosity of their souls, and their compassion for all mankind." One of the old transmitters of traditions transmitted this tradition. God says, they are 40 righteous men, all by me, mine, and to me. As for God saying, all by me, that means they stand by me, they sit by me, they talk by me, and by me they give and take. This is corroborated by the divine hadith transmitted by the Prophet. When I love my servant, I become his hearing, his sight, his tongue, his foot, his heart. He hears by me, he sees by me, he speaks by me, he takes by me, he removes by me, and he understands by me. As for God's saying, all 40 are mine, that means they are my chosen ones. They have offered their hearts and selves to me. Therefore they are mine, and they do not take the lower selves as partners with me. As for God saying, all to me, that means their hearts turn to me in every matter, step and state. As for those whose hearts are modeled upon the heart of Abraham, they are those whose hearts do not rely on anything but God, be it worldly or be it otherworldly. One more tradition by way of describing them. They do not fuss. They do not innovate. They are not conceited. They have attained what they have attained not because of fasting and praying or almsgiving in profusion, but because of the generosity of the self, the integrity of their hearts, and the good counsel to other people. In my community, they are as sparse as red sulfur. For Abu Abdallah, there was one way by which men and women could attain a degree of sanctity like that. A practical way. And this way is to repeat a formula. Perhaps we would use the word mantra. The sacred formula for him, and the one that he expounds upon in most of his writing, is the La ilaha illallah. And there are many, many passages, moving passages, where he describes this practice. And he even has a name for the people who practice this, and he calls them the people of La ilaha illallah. And from the many passages that I came across, I chose one that I'd like to read to you. And these things are, of course, connected, because the work of the helpers cannot be done without the hearts of human beings resounding the formula of complete and utter trust and faith in oneness. So here we come into the picture. And he says, understand, O you, whose face God has illumined by the clouds of compassion under which he has shaded you. You, whom he has submerged in the seas of graces and favors, and then drowned in his acts of kindness. You, who he has made one of those who in honesty pronounce La ilaha illallah. This formula, which prevails upon the tongues of multitudes of people, whose number only God can count. You, whose tongue he has humbled by its worship, and has made its burden light for you to carry and easy for you to handle. La ilaha illallah. A formula that if it had to carry the heavens and earth, they would have been shattered into thin dust. A formula whose sound adorns the earth, a sound which the hills and the valleys and the deserts and the spaces boast of, and for whose sake they contend and compete with each other. A formula which pierces through the celestial air, which pierces through the heavenly seas, which pierces through the sickness of the seven spheres, which pierces through the rows of angels, which pierces through the seas of fire, which pierces through the seas of darkness, which pierces one by one through the seas of light, which pierces through the seas of snow and the seas of hail, a formula which pierces through the veils of revelations and the veils of holiness and the veils of lightnings and the veils of rubies and the veils of precious stones and the veils of pearls and the veils of fires, and does not stop piercing through one veil after another till it reaches the veil of all. There are 70,000 veils. The thickness of each veil is like the distance traveled in 500 years. Between each of the veils there are deserts of lights whose measure is 500 years. A formula which pierces through all these veils and through the spaces and deserts of light between them till it stands in front of our Lord, the Lord of power, and its voice and echo reverberate around the throne. A formula invested with power and authority, with which it pierces through these veils, with which it traverses through these open spaces faster than a flash of lightning, faster than an eye blink, till it stands with a roar and a sound in its place by the throne of the Compassionate One. And when the angels hear this roaring sound, they raise their voices around the throne, all these angels who surround the throne, and the angel whose name is Spirit, They raise their voices in glorification and praise and jubilation and sanctification and supplication. They say, "Praise be to Thee, who is sublime in power, who is sublime in majesty, who is sublime in exaltation. There is no God but You. Forgive the one who pronounces this formula. Protect him from the tribulation of hell, and take him into the gardens which You have allotted for him and his ancestors, and his spouse, and his descendants. For You are the mighty and wise."